First memories I have is living in Croydon with grandparents during the war. Grandmother had a shop at the end of the road. Some At the end of the road was also a big block of flats where my friends lived. Our house was one of the best built ones in the street. A lot of them were shattered, and we decided to walk up the street to see our friends. And while we were there, the block of flats had the whole of the side of it falling down. With I remember one friend standing in the bedroom with her mum waving to me. The next thing, the whole thing collapsed. We ran back to find that my mother was packing. We were being pushed off to Birmingham. And we remember playing in a bombed house and finding a handbag in some gardens, and thought that we could get the ration books out of it and get some sweets. But when my mother found out, we hid it from her at first. She found it and she said, "No, you can't." And it was a woman who'd been killed in that house with a bomb. So the other time in the winter, we were sent out to play in the street, and we saw these men kept going up into this big house and then disappearing. And we were so inquisitive, we thought we'd follow them. It was a hotel billeted for American airmen, and they were all American. And as we got out the lift, petrified that we were going to get into serious trouble again, as we were running down, we heard someone say, "There's some kids here," in American accent. So somebody caught us, grabbed us and pulled us into their room and sat us down. And these were family men who'd got children. So they were so pleased to see us. We were treated with chocolates and chewing gum. Chewing gum was the popular thing then. And oranges that we'd never ever seen. They got all these nice things. Gave us a great big bag, and one of them said, "I'll take you home." That part of our life, I think, was like a funny side of it. We were then sent to another school. And I think in the 10 years of schooling, I went to 10 different schools, all because of moving with the war, moving around. It was a matter of making friends, but not making very strong friends, because you didn't know if you got to be moved again, so you just casually made friends. However, in those days, as we grew up, it wasn't expected for girls to do that well at school. You were given 3 categories: commercial, domestic and factory. You were put in those 3 categories quite early, about 10 or 11-year-old. Then I was told, my mother was told, that I would never work in an office, that I would be the domestic sort, work in a shop, work in a factory, work in a shop, work in an office. That was your 3 things. And I was called to the headmaster's office. My mother sat there. They decided between them that I should do shorthand typing. There were no office jobs, there were no factory jobs, there were no shops. So she thought the only way to amuse me was, and I was taken to another school which I hated. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be a hairdresser. So I did this course, which was a waste of time to a certain degree. By then I was 16. Anyway, moving on from that, I decided, because my parents had a post office in this village, I was the only girl. You were frowned upon really badly if you got pregnant before you were married. My future husband's brother got his girlfriend pregnant, and they wouldn't let them live together, they wouldn't let them marry. That was disgraceful. And I felt the pressure not to get pregnant. There was no pills, there were no ways of contraception. You knew the only way not to get pregnant was not to have sex. By then, I was nearly 19, and now the pressure on girls in those days was for the girls to say no, but no pressure on the boys to not ask. So it was unnatural. It's natural for both to want to have sex, but wasn't thought of that way. You were either put in a home somewhere, you had your baby taken off you, you were a disgrace to the village and the family. So I got married. I can remember, was I in love? Did I love him? I liked him enough, but I don't know now looking back. It was a convenient. I could get out of my house. We bought a caravan. We could live in a caravan together. Then I had a cyst that had to be cauterised, so I ended up getting pregnant. When I found out I was pregnant, I couldn't believe I was. I really don't know why, because I've been married 3 years and thought, well, I'm not pregnant now. But by the time I was pregnant, my marriage was already rocky. My husband was violent if he didn't get his own way. In fact, he started a fight a couple of times while I was pregnant, and I managed to get out a caravan window away from him and sleep in the car. But once you were pregnant, you had to put up with it. Mum and Dad said, you can't come back here. You've made your bed, you lie on it. You know what the world is about, so put up with it. So the best thing I could do was to push my husband to get out of the caravan and into a house and make a better life for us. I had my son and my daughter in that area. My daughter was born actually in that house, in the living room. Again, midwifery was, you could have your first baby in the hospital, second baby must be at home. And when I told my husband that my waters had broke, the baby's coming, he just said, much of the day is on, wait till that's finished, let's have a good night, and I'll call the midwife in the morning. So at 2 in the morning I said, you better call her now because this baby's coming. Also, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was very, very sick, and I looked in the medicine cabinet, saw this pill, and I thought, I know that was for sickness, should I take it? And I decided, no, I'll put up with it until 3 months and see if it goes. When my daughter was about 2 or 3, the doctor called me into the office and there was a survey being done, and that pill was thalidomide. Had I taken it, both my children would have been deformed. It was 1961, 1962 that all the babies were being born, and they didn't know till about 1963 or 4. So anyway, going on from that, I realised then, the doctors then said, we've got a new pill out, a new contraceptive pill. It had been tested in Germany, never in England, not in Cambridgeshire. So would I like to try it? Because I'd had 2 children in 11 months, I said yes. I took it for 5 years, and it was called estrogen E, and it gave me cancer of the womb because it was too strong. They didn't realise this either. They were still experimenting. So I had a full hysterectomy at the age of, I think, 32. So that was another thing that we had to go through, those eras and trying these things to make it perfect for today's girls, which it is. It's down to the fine art. And girls these days do not have to worry about whether it's good or not for them, because that was what happened in the beginning. Anyway, we carried on with this house and we lived there quite happily. We found this piece of land and we were going to build on it. We were given permission to build 4 or 5 houses, but my husband wanted one bungalow, one big bungalow to show off. And I thought this was a bit stupid when we could have built 2 or 3 and made more money. But anyway, we built this bungalow and between us worked very hard, both of us. However, parents and other people all kept saying to me, aren't you lucky your husband John has provided this for you? And I felt quite perturbed because I was putting as much work into it as he was. I was earning a bit of money, putting towards keeping the family going, and I used to think, well, I've done as much as him. But my parents particularly, you've got to be grateful that your husband is giving you this life. I started to feel as though my life was run by my parents and then by my husband. And I resented it because I felt I got more. I hadn't been well educated, but I got more about me. And my four brothers were all going to university and eventually earning good money and having careers, and I was left behind. But the best thing about it all is my daughter came back to England with her two children who have been educated really well in Tenerife and then again in England. And they are getting their careers going and they are doing well. And I am so, so pleased through what I've gone through, especially my granddaughter. She and all her friends and that age group have got the freedom to decide what they want to do career-wise, marriage-wise. They don't have to worry about getting pregnant. They can enjoy life, and they are nearly, not quite, as equal to the boys. It's still a man's world, but girls are getting there and they can still have choices, which we couldn't have. 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it's slowly getting there. After all that, I look back at my grandmother and what she had to put up with and do. She was a suffragette. She started the movement, and it's now rolling, and it's going. Not that we don't like men, we don't like boys, we just want to say we're as good as them. Not better, just as good. That's what I've got to say.